Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, liebe Freunde on other people. We're using a little bit of help here because we have a lot of stuff to talk about. My name is Mark Arnau. I'm 56 years old, and because of my age, I was lucky to witness the rise of the European straight edge firsthand. Not just as a bystander, but in an active role. You might know me from my band Betray or from Revelation Europe that I ran in the 90s. And next to me is JP. He is only 50 years old, so he's sort of a new jack. But he's been around for quite some decades as well in the straight edge community. And you might know him of Value of Strength, his fencing, or the Geleenfest from the mid-90s. Together, we played in a band called Birds of a Feather, who played in the first part of this century, around 2005 to 2009. And together we wrote a book. And JP is now going to show our book. It's called We Could Not Do Any Better, and it's about straight edge in Europe. We are aiming for an active presentation. So if any one of you has any questions, please raise your hand or your voice. I must immediately say that I'm vision impaired, so if you raise your hand and you're on that side of the stage, like Björn, I don't see you. So then either JP has to see it or you have to shout. That's good. So if you have any question, we'll try to answer that straight away. So stay tuned. I want to commemorate 3 people that passed away recently. In the 80s, I had a lot of contact with Armin Hofman, who is from around here, from a band called Ski6. He passed away. Tony Leber from BGK passed away recently. And last week we lost Steve Albini, who was a great friend and also a great contributor to our scene. So I just want to dedicate this presentation to these 3 people, because we lost so many friends over the last couple of years. Allow me to take you back to the late 70s. When I was a teenager, I was like 11 in 1978, a time when there was no internet, there was no Spotify, and television and radio offered the same boring stuff all over again. And in the midst of all that, punk rock came to the stage. And when I was 12, I discovered bands like Madness and The Jam that put me on the trail of punk rock. So, in my local library, when I was 12, I stumbled upon this album by a band called The X from the Netherlands. And this album costed back then €5. It has an album and a 7-inch and a booklet in it. And the booklet tells you how you can record and publish your own album. And I was like, what the fuck? What is this? And at the same new thing at my library, they also had this book called Pavua Punk, which was a compilation of old Koekrand magazines, a punk rock magazine from the 1970s in Amsterdam. And I was like 12, and I was like sunk into this hardcore. So I discovered the underground. And at the time, I was 12, I didn't have any money for records. So luckily, my older niece, she worked at a record store. So I could ask her to order specific underground records that she would get. I would get them from the store, take them at home, and return them on Thursday evening, so I didn't have to pay for the record, and she could resell it or ship it back to the distributor. What I also did on those Thursday evenings was not just returning the record, but also I went to do grocery shopping with my mom. Because on Thursday evenings was the only night in Holland that shops were open. And the same guy who did shopping with his dad was Menno. And he was like a punk, like a real punk with like, you know, studs and leather jackets and big hair. And he turned out to be the singer of Lerm. So I went to a Lerm show in 1982, and the rest is history. JP, how did you get into hardcore?
Well, hello. It's almost a similar story like you, but I got introduced to alternative music at a very young age by my cousin who was babysitting. And it wasn't until a couple of years later when an old friend of mine, he made a mixtape, and on that tape was on the A side was like a lot of new wave and dark wave bands, like that style of music that I was into at that moment. But on the B side was filled with punk and hardcore bands, and that was completely new to me. But I liked it, I got excited about it, and that's basically how I got into it. But once I got into this movement called hardcore and punk rock, I felt like I was the only kid in my village where I grew up, like the only punk in town. There was like literally nobody, and in the area where I grew up, there was like luckily like a really small scene that I found out later, that I found out about later on. But yeah, what made me different from the, so I was into alternative music, but what made me different, or like why I was also a vegetarian before I even knew about punk and hardcore. And so I was also on the lookout to try and find like soulmates, you know, like people who were just like me. But I mean, like literally there wasn't like no one. But then I got into skateboarding, and through Thrasher magazine, I found out about bands like the Bad Brains, and later on Julius and Gorilla Biscuits, and they had lyrics that also were about vegetarianism. So that was for me like a highlight right away. And short after that, I found out that there was like a local scene in the area where I grew up with like-minded people, and there was even a straight edge band in the area where I grew up.
Welche?
Huh?
Welche? Which one?
That was Point of No Return. Actually, I went to the same high school as these guys, like some of them, but we didn't really talk to each other. And in the end, I got in touch with Michel. It was like we had a sports day at school, and I brought my skateboard to high school, and I had like on the grip tape from the skateboard, I wrote like the Warzone logo and the Youth of the Day fist and stuff like that. And then actually Michel, who was at that time the guitar player for Point of No Return, he came over to me and he was like, hey, you have Warzone written on your skate deck. You know that's a wrong band, right? They are like a nationalist, I mean, you're not supposed to do that stuff. So basically that was when I got in touch with these guys, or we started talking. Yeah.
When you were the nest.
So basically the scene police got you into the scene.
Pretty much. But I also, you know, I didn't know, man, I didn't know Warzone or whatever. I only knew them from the 7-inch, and I didn't look any further. I didn't know they were like, whatever, you know, like just like Agnostic Front back then, or...
And they were just nice guys.
Yeah.
I mean...
right now they are.
And also Rabies passed away as well, so, you know...
So from that sports day on, I got in touch with like so I already found out about the scene in the area that I grew up. I found out about there was like-minded people, but then I also got in touch with kids who were playing actually in a straight edge band. And I mean, that made like an impact on me. So I wanted to contribute to the scene as well. And, but I was too stubborn to play in a band with other people. So, yeah.
I noticed that during the writing of this book that he's stubborn.
So,
you started a fanzine.
Oh yeah, exactly. Since I was already taking pictures and from skateboarding sessions, but also I started going to shows, so I took pictures. I was like, maybe I can combine these things and make a fanzine as well. And that's how I started my own fanzine called Value of Strength. And it started out with a cut and paste style layout fanzine, from maybe 100 or 200 copies. And the last issue was completely different. It had like a 4,500 copies print run, and it was digital design to the bone. Yeah, but also during those early fanzine days, that's how Mark and I met. Do you want to tell a story? Should I tell?
No, you can tell.
So I was on a lunch break walking with high school friends in the city in a downtown area, and I was wearing a sweater from a band called Endpoint, and we were just walking there during our lunch break, and then all of a sudden I got yelled at from the other side of the street. Like there was this guy walking in a suit and tied up, and he was like, "Yo, straight edge." And I was like, "Yo, who is that?" I felt a little bit embarrassed. But later I found out it was Mark, who was running Revelation Records at that time in Europe. So, and I already visited his office quite some times in Amsterdam, but he was never there.
Just a room.
Just a room.
And he came to pick up a specially colored vinyl from Revelation Europe.
Warzone.
I think it was not Warzone, but probably other bands.
I can't remember either.
Well, anyway, as you noticed, we all have this entrances into the hardcore scene, and also if you read the book, there's always some record, something happening that got people in the hardcore scene. And since you're not asking us any questions, I'm going to ask you any questions. Does anyone want to share what the record was that got him into hardcore, or her, or them? Anyone?
Can't close my eyes.
Can't Close My Eyes, really good record. Michael Müller.
DRI.
DRI, which one? The dealing with it or the horrible one?
The horrible one.
The horrible one. Anyone else?
Mouthpiece. What was that?
Mouthpiece.
And battery, only the tire.
Yeah, great choices. Thank you for sharing. Some of those bands are portrayed lightly in our book. I think the story about the DRI album is also in the book because we interviewed Michael Müller. I think there's something about, weren't you like member of the like creator or whatever? Some fan club from a metal?
Metal Front Fighters.
That was it, there you are. That's also in the book. And it's a nice bridge to our book. We're going to tell you something about our book, but as JP showed you, the book is 700 pages and it contains 40 years, so we're not going to tell everything that's in the book, and also we want you to buy the book. So we're not going to tell everything that's in the book. Anyway, we wrote this book in the first place, you know, because we lived this. We lived this and we did it. And we wanted to share what we did. Secondly, we're also going to give you in this presentation a short overview of how straight edge in Europe started. And thirdly, towards the end, we'll tell you something about, well, some German stories from the book, since we are in Deutschland sein. Huh? And we're also going to ask Michael a question about one of those stories. But let's provide some context about what straight edge is for us, because I think it's a personal choice for everyone. But for us, it's a part of the hardcore punk community that's based on 4 simple principles. You don't smoke, you don't do drugs, you don't drink alcohol, and you abstain from casual sex. And how you go about that, it's your personal choice. Later on, during the late 80s, animal rights also got involved in the whole idea of clean living, resulting in a lot of people firstly becoming vegetarian in the mid 80s, and towards the end of the 80s, and especially in the 90s, a lot of straight edgers went vegan. But for us, straight edge is nothing if you're not into punk or hardcore. Then it's just being sober. As I think I write in the book, it's like wearing combat boots and army pants and a punk rock t-shirt and never go to a punk rock show. That doesn't make you punk, the costume you wear. So if you're not into punk or hardcore or not politically involved, for us, then you're not straight edge, you're just sober. But hey, that's just us. I'm just curious, are there any people that still call themselves straight edge over here? Fortunately, there are a couple. Thank you. Let's start with the story behind the book.
Yes, so from 2005 till 2008, Mark and I played in a band called Birds of a Feather, and we were a straight edge band with members from 30 years or older. So at that time, it seemed ridiculous, but all of a sudden, we were in a band with members from other bands like Main Strike, and the Crivets, and the Man Lifting Banner, and Cold Turkey. So that was yeah, that was kind of cool, especially for me, since I had no experience playing in bands at all. But what we discovered is, when we once started out playing, is that kids that were attending shows, they were younger, a lot younger. Oftentimes like 10, 15 years younger than we were. So basically, it's like a different generation. And that those kids, they did not, like not all of them, but like we had the impression that they did not all know about the history of straight edge in Europe, because for them the path was already paved. In 2006 and 2007, we recorded our full-length album. It's the one that Mark's holding up right now. It's called The Past, The Present, and it's a concept LP covering our thoughts about the past 25 years of straight edge in Europe. Because in the van, when we went on trips, when we were playing shows and we traveled places, we were telling each other stories about how we lived or what happened. Let's see. We were telling stories about our past, basically. Yeah? Yes. But we also noticed that our shared history was slowly fading away. So at that time. That being said, at that time there were only books about mainly US or UK bands that covered punk rock and straight edge, or punk rock and hardcore. So we wanted to do something about it. So we got in touch with people for the. So we put out a book with the LP. Did you show the book already?
No. It's a gatefold LP. Ta-da! There's a book in it.
So there's a book in it on 12-inch format, where this is basically the first step we did in writing the book. And we got in touch with people, but like, as usual, half of them did not respond to our emails, or they never got back to us. But we were still committed to the idea of releasing the book with the record, and we pushed through, and the book came out. But in the meantime, there was also this guy from Germany, Helge Schreiber, and Hans Verbeke from Belgium, who wrote books about hardcore and punk in Europe.
Yeah, so basically between that book and now, there are some books written about the European story, but still it's very shallow. And we decided to have our LP to be accompanied by a book. And I remember when I was like 13, 14, and I would get like a Dead Kennedys album or a Crash album, and they had these books. I would like play the record like 20 times, and in the meantime read all those books. So for me it was also something to connect with my past, to bring a book out with the LP. But as soon as the LP was released, we sort of knew that we could do better, because as JP said, a lot of people didn't respond. We had a deadline for the album, so we had to write the book in a certain time. We couldn't complete it. We were still young, only in our 30s, so we were not as experienced with it. And also, when we saw how the book came from the printer, we were sort of disappointed, because it was really a black and white book instead of a book with some nice grayscales where you could see the pictures in a nice way.
We were disappointed.
What?
We were disappointed.
Well, you were disappointed. Sorry, he was disappointed. I'm never disappointed. I'm a positive guy. I'm straight edge, you know. I'm never disappointed. But it took a while to get things going and to redo our book. So we seriously picked up the work again in 2019, because the 8000 book was released, and by chance Refused came by, so we spoke to Dennis in Amsterdam for like 3 hours, which was great, and then we're like all pumped up to do it. But then COVID broke out, and that sort of helped, because everybody was all of a sudden used to video meetings, so we could talk to all these people all over Europe, not by email or by Skype, but just do video meetings. So we made a list of all the people we wanted to speak with, which was about 150 people. We spoke to about 100 people, I think, so there are still some we didn't talk to. And we had to make this to a book. We just ran out of steam after so many years of doing interviews. And I sort of stopped doing the interviews if people were either telling the same story from a different perspective, because I was thinking like, hey, I've heard this before, or people were basically telling a boring story like, we were on a high school, there was one other straight edge kid, we grabbed two other kids, we made them straight edge, we made one 7-inch, we played a show, and then we broke up. If that's your story, you're not in the book. And also, if we didn't meet you, you're not in the book. Because we used our own friends to write the story. We divided it into chapters where we used Dutch band for. So the first real chapter is about Lerm. The second chapter is about Man Lifting Banner, and then you get a chapter about Main Strike, and we added all these other European bands to complete the story. I just want to take a little bit of time to explain where straight edge in Europe comes from, and of course Lerm from the Netherlands, although they have a German name, Lerm. They really got things going, and they were amazing. I mean, there were these 4 guys from Amersfoort. They lived next to me. I was fortunate to be I happened to be in their surroundings. So I witnessed this ultra fast thrashcore with straight edge and communist lyrics from first hand. And they did everything. I mean, first of all, they made an LP. I mean, people I knew made an LP, which was at the time unheard of. And I want to show you that LP, because I got 10 copies of Menno, the singer, and he gave me this LP, and he said, here are 10 copies, just sell them to your friends and pay me later. And I thought that was amazing, that somebody would give me 10 of his own LPs that he made, and like, go sell them to your friends, and whenever you sold them, pay me. And the funny thing about Lerm is they did everything by themselves. So in the book you can read about how they made their artwork, which was just like a black marker, and then they pasted white stuff on it. And we finally discovered where this cow comes from. It comes from a comic called Paling and Co. Maybe, I think it's called differently in Germany. But for people who want to know, we found the cow that Jos traced and put on the cover of this album. And that image is also in the book. So you know where they all stole it from. And what they also did, I mean, these were 4 guys. They had a band that played all over Europe. They ran a squad where they had like bands playing from America, which was, bands from America that played hardcore. Like, Government Issue came by, and I saw them in a shed in Amersfoort. But they also ran a fanzine called Definite Choice. And I think the most amazing for the 80s was, I mean, there was like no cell phones or cameras, but they bought a video camera and started a video label, Definite Choice Videos. I mean, these are from 85 and 86. And there was all this crap on TV, and then they made like videotapes with bands from their own squad, which was, for a kid like me, was truly amazing. So that we had videos with us on it, in the audience or in the bands playing, and bands we saw play on the video, that was like amazing. So I think we owe a lot to Lerm. Do you continue, or? Yes. I think so, huh?
Yes. So Lerm stopped in 1988, and in 1988 bands like Profound, they started. Profound started, and with the 2 brothers from who also played in Lerm, they started Profound, and later on, I believe it was in '89, bands like Rise Above and Betray, they started as well. But Profound, they turned into Man Lifting Banner, and they combined straight edge with a political message. They were international socialists and communism. And the German label Crucial Response Records gave them a platform, put out their records, and But next to Man Lifting Banner and Profound, they also put out the records from Betray, right? And these
but
bands,
not from Rise Above, and that's also in the book.
Exactly. Okay, I was going to say that, but anyway. But the reason why Rise Above did not sign to Crucial Response, you can read that in the book as well. But like bands like Man Lifting Banner and Betray, they were not like typical youth group bands, or they were just like fast hardcore bands with a political message and a straight edge message. So mostly unknown to themselves at the time, Man Lifting Banner they had inspired a lot of people, and because of that, I think bands like, I'm pretty sure no, like, because Dennis confirmed, like bands like Refused and Onward and Blindfold and Spawn maybe also they started. So new times. When Man Lifting Banner quit in 1995, Bigma, that was their guitar player, he started a new band called Mainstrike, and that might have possibly been the first youth group band in Europe. Straight edge youth group band in Europe. And at that same time, there was also, from 1992, there was the Ebelfest, so that started growing bigger. So we had like Mainstrike, like Man Lifting Banner quit, Mainstrike started. Like they were like an outspoken youth group, straight edge, traditional hardcore band. Ebelfest started in '92. The festival became bigger and bigger each year. The 8,000 scene without the H maybe. So in the beginning there was the 8,000 scene, which has bands like Shortside and Blindfold and Congress. Congress and Nations on Fire and Spirit of Youth. That was also something that was going on. And I started to do the Geleenfest together with Ferry in the Netherlands from 95 till 1998. And since Geleen is close to the German border, we also had like a lot of visitors, of course, from Germany. So I'm wondering if there is like anybody out here who came to the Geleenfest.
So, what do you think of it? What are your
What do you remember?
Wild weekends.
Were you at the one where you slept over in the venue?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I think that's a great experience.
No, the first one was, the sleeping place was like 30-minute walk from the venue. So when the festival was done on the Saturday, like everybody had to wait outside the venue and then walk all together to the sleeping place. And the year after, we stayed inside the venue. Like everybody stayed inside the venue, and that was completely irresponsible. So many things could have happened there that night, but luckily nothing happened.
You will experience this again this night.
Tonight, in the basement. Oh yeah. So yeah, the mid to late 90s. I think straight edge at that time in Europe was at its highest. There were shows like every weekend and records put out non-stop almost. But 5 years later, most of the bands quit. So in 2005, Mark and I, and together with Big Man and a couple more guys, we started Birds of a Feather, which is like one of the triggers for us, why we wrote this book.
Yes, exactly. Well, we went into that part of our history already, and I also promised you some German stories. So here we go. First of all, I think the German scene and the Dutch scene were very intertwined. For instance, the people from Tudu Hospital responded to the design of Lerm's second LP and even corrected some mistakes. Me personally, I designed the sleeve for the Ski 6 LP Selling Out, but also for my personal collection is here a copy of Trust Fanzine that we all read. Although it was I think Maxim Rock and Roll's little brother, it was still very cool that it was in Europe and in German. So we always had a lot of things going back and forth. And in our midst is Michael Müller. He's sitting over there. And he is one of the 3 people that organized the first all-European, all-straight-edge show here in Wattenscheid, which I think was a great turning point for our scene. Man Lifting Banner played there, I think Feeding the Fire, or were they still on No Return. Betray was playing there. It was just amazing that we could pull off such a show. What? Otherwise played Profex, I think they weren't straight edge. Or 7-inch boots.
X-Large played.
Yeah, exactly.
Programs
So,
cancelled, right?
Michael, do you want to share why you put that show on? Please give a big hand to Michael Müller.
Maybe we take a step back. I think all the people who really started the scene in Germany, we all met during the two tours in 1989, at first Youth for Day and then Gorilla Biscuits. When I became straight edge in '88, but there was like no scene, and all the people who became influential to the local scene, we all met during those two tours. And at that time already we had the idea to do something by ourselves, and then I think it was in 1990 there was a show in Belgium, in Mol, where Rise Above was playing, I think Betray was playing, Man Lifting Banner still, back then still was, they were called Profound. And I talked to some of my friends and we had the idea to do something similar in the Ruhrpott area. So I was looking for a suitable location, and we found that youth center in Wattenscheid. Because I was, I can't really remember what kind of show it was, but I was at a show there a short while before. So, but we all had no experience whatsoever for what you need to do a show. So we really had to start from scratch. You know, I had to get the PA, I had to get the backline, I had to, in order to get more money, we talked to there was an institution in Bochum called Rock Bureau. So we Rock Bureau? Yeah, we asked him if they would support the show, because it was like a positive message, no drugs and whatsoever. And so they asked us to do a cost analysis. So I faked the cost analysis, so in order to show them that we're gonna lose money. And so we got 400 Deutschmarks from the city of Bochum.
Yay! German government, thank you so much.
Which was pretty amazing. Yeah, and I mean, there was like all those little things, you know. Most of us were vegetarian at that time, but nobody could really cook, so we bought like a whole bunch of Miracoli family packages, and so we did like noodles with tomato sauce for all the bands, you know. And
it was wonderful. I still remember that meal.
Yeah, and the original lineup included also Breaking Through, which later became Hammerhead, and Intricate, a band from Hilden. But they both couldn't really play. I think at that time both bands were like 50% straight edge. Later on they were like not really straight edge anymore. So we had to look for other bands, so we came up with Otherwise from Bremen, I guess, Point of No Return. And my friend Mark, who was also involved in doing the show, he did the crossblock fanzine. He was good friends with people from Switzerland. So X-Large played, and there was a little project band with members from X-Large and Profex. I think they called themselves Vitacorn, just for the band. And they did some amazing cover versions, with probably the best crowd response for the whole show.
Is there also
And-
what I was wondering about, like, is there also a story about the 5 different flights?
Yeah, what about the 5 different flyers you made for the show?
I don't know. I mean, we all decided to do flyers. So I did 2 flyers, and the other guys did flyers as well. So
Did you do the one that says "Freaks Stay Out"?
yeah, and let me tell you, I got a lot of shit for it.
I think you also refused some people entrance to the show.
I don't know.
I think
I can't remember.
I think Andreas is saying so. So, well, thanks for sharing. Give Michael a big hand of applause.
Are we continuing with some stories?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so in the late 80s, there was no internet, and there was no, like, the only way to stay in touch with each other was either writing letters or phone calls, like the old-fashioned way. So in that time, I got in touch with a guy from former East Germany. His name is Marco Rabold, and I remember that he told me that as soon as the walls came down in whatever it was, 88, 89.
I think it was after David Hasselhoff sang in Berlin.
Anyway, when the walls came down, like, all the people from former East Germany, they got gifted like 100 Deutschmark
Deutschmark.
by the state, And I remember him telling me that when he got this money, he traveled to the west part of Germany to go to visit a record store and buy, for example, the Gorilla Biscuit Start Today record from that money.
Also funded by the German government. Thank you so much.
And I think in general it must be said, also from our own experience from playing shows in Germany, that shows over here are more energetic and cooler than the shows that we do in the Netherlands. People over here they have to be more fun. They have more, it looks like they have more fun. There's more enthusiasm, and especially in former Eastern Germany, I almost had the impression like these guys, they had to catch up with something. They were very appreciative. But another thing from the mid-90s that I do remember, and this is a link between March True Records and the band now. I remember catching up with the guys from Surface. I was still living in the southern part of the Netherlands, close to the German border, close to Aachen. And I got in touch with, I believe it was Sammy or Boris from Surface, and they were playing a show in Schleiz. And Schleiz is a small town in eastern Germany. And the same guy, Marco Rabold, he had a record label and he put out a 7-inch from these guys. So what I did, I took the train from Aachen to, I believe it was Duisburg, and then I got picked up by the Surface guys, and we traveled for another 6 hours to Schleiz to see a show from, I believe it was Surface and Dharma, and maybe Veil as well. So yeah.
Which is always awesome, that you travel like 8 hours to see like 3 shitty bands in the middle of nowhere, but that's hardcore, you know, that's dedication. Do you want to also tell the story about René Natzel, or? Let's skip that. Who cares?
No, but the thing is, René Natzel, he played in Spawn and Inner Circle.
And Feed the Fire.
This band, yes, that's what I was going to say. But and I was from the area, from the Feed the Fire guys. We grew up in the same area, and René Natzel, he played drums for them. He played drums for Spawn and for Feed the Fire. So what we often did is we traveled from Heerlen or Kerkrade to Mülheim aan de Ruhr, if I remember correct, to pick him up for band practice with Feed the Fire.
I guess we're sort of coming to an end. You're not asking a lot of questions to us, so I have a question for the people in the back there. Is it still interesting for you, or you don't care at all? You just go like, what the fuck? Anyway, I promised German stories. I'm going to tell one more German story, because I think it's also in the book, but it's the great story. But what I told you is, what I liked about the book is that I got to reveal all these little stories and little secrets, which I really loved, you know, about some people getting a depression from the International Socialists to other things. So I want to tell you the last German anecdote for the day. In the late 90s, Spawn stopped and they evolved into eyeball. And eyeballing is actually a word that made it into the Dutch hardcore slang. And it means that when you have to open a show, if you, as a band, you know, it's always shitty because there's like no audience and nobody is that excited. So you delay your travels on the way to the show to grab coffee or crisps, or you go out for gas for a long time, and then you come to the show so late that you don't have to open, but you're like the second or the third band all of a sudden. And in the Dutch hardcore scene, that's called eyeballing. And you might guess from which band it comes from. I thought it was a great little story, and our book has a lot of these little stories. I think there's some, I wrote it, but I think there's some really funny parts in it that make me laugh. And these stories come from Germany, from Sweden, from Norway, from the UK, from Belgium, from Holland, and of course the backbone is Holland, because that's where we're from, and we talk to our friends and snowballed from there. And some countries are underexposed. You know, we tell a little bit about Spain, Portugal, and Italy, but not a lot. Sorry for that. It's our story. So I want to end with 3 particular things that I want to say for everybody who's going to read the book. We wrote this book for a specific audience. First of all, we really wrote it for the people that were there. This is a book about us. This is a book about you. This is a book about the people that were there and made this awesome scene happen. And unfortunately, a lot of that scene is gone, but fortunately, a lot of people are still here today and are tied to the past. And we wanna vastleggen, how do you say that? We wanna commemorate that past with this book, not to glorify what we did, but just, to make like a paper witness of what happened and that it will not disappear. Secondly, I didn't write it for like hardcore buffs or hardcore encyclopedia guys or punk rock scene police. I also wrote it for people that might be interested in our specific scene of straight edge and left-wing politics and veganism. So I made it accessible for people that don't even know what straight edge is or a hardcore underground. So excuse me if I'm not going into like the deep roots of a shitty band from Hungary that also experienced something. Sorry for that. And thirdly, I want to make clear that in the book, as I just did about the shitty band in Hungary, I don't judge anyone. I don't judge on how people live straight edge. I don't judge on international socialism. I don't judge on Hare Krishna. I leave that up to the reader. I think it's good for you that we just pass the stories from the people we heard them from to the people that read the book. And please make up your own mind. We're all punk rockers or hardcore. We're critical thinkers. So draw your own conclusions. I just want to make that clear. Our book is full of personal tales from people who've been frontline players in the straight edge scene. Does it cover the full story? No. It's our story. It's our story about the people we met through the years. We established and preserved their stories. If we never met you, you're not in this book. We just did what we wanted to do. And I hope you like what we did because we could not do any better. Thank you. And there's a little exhibition here, and we're going to go back there. And if you want to talk to us, feel welcome. We're here all night.
And thank you for giving us a platform to do our thing here today.